Hi, my name is Stephen Tronichek, and I am with HorrOrigins.com. HorrOrigins is a website where you can find articles, interviews, and reviews. We also run our very own film festival and screenplay competition. Today, I'm talking with the many filmmakers behind the anthology film Isolation. Thank you so much for being here, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So, jumping right in here, for Nathan, in the press materials, it says that you kind of had the conceptual idea going into this. So I wanted to ask about the genesis of the project. And for everybody else, I wanted to ask about how you got involved in the project.
So I'll try to keep it short and sweet. I was, like a lot of other people, was going to do a feature, but then that got, shelved because of COVID. And I was talking to a buddy of mine. I was like, well, I want to shoot something. I was going to shoot a short. He's like, why don't you think a little bit bigger? And I was like, okay, I guess I have all the time in the world, but I was like, I'm not going to write a feature in like a couple of weeks. It's not going to be good. But I thought to myself, like, what if I got a group of amazing directors to write a bunch of shorts? We could really tailor them and spend the time to write, anywhere between 5 and 15 minutes. I really thought we could get something very solid. So I ended up calling up James Gannon, my producing partner, said, hey, do you want to do this crazy idea with me? And he said, yeah. So then it was a course over 2 months of trying to find, directors that I love their work. One, and two, were able that had 4K cameras that were able to shoot in lockdown, that I knew could write and I knew could pull off something really special. And I spoke to a lot of different people. A lot of people couldn't do it, but after about 2 months, I finally found the core group, which is the group that's in Isolation, and they believed enough in me to take on the film. And I think I'm super proud of the project and what they've done, and they trusted me. So I want to thank all of you for that. And that's kind of the quick and dirty of how it all kind of came about.
Excellent. All right. Zach, how did you get involved in the project?
Well, I think I came in a little bit later in the game, but yeah, Nathan reached out, and I think he knew some mutual friends, and it just seemed like it kind of coincided with how I was trying to interpret going into the pandemic and lockdown and things like that. It was like this whole idea of like, okay, well, we're all, my wife and my 2 sons, we're all going to be in the house ad infinitum, possibly. And what are we going to do here? We're working, but I'm not working anymore. And it's just like, but I'm used to filming and editing and doing all this stuff all the time. And so it just was like, yeah, well, should be some romantic idea of, well, why don't you make something while you're in lockdown? And so I've been going through these thought processes, and then Nathan reached out, and I was like, oh, okay, this could work. And this kind of like made it feel like more like, it's made it official, and was like, lit the actual fire. Like, well, yeah, now you got to do this. now you have to be productive during this time. And so it's kind of perfect. There's a lot of energy and anxieties and all sorts of things that fuel creativity and other things, but that were happening around that time. So it's a nice little portal.
Yeah, I definitely agree that in this period of time, there is this feeling of like wanting to be productive, but it's like, well, there is a pandemic. Alix, Alix and Keir, how'd you get involved?
Nathan sort of messaged us out of the blue, I think, based off of a horror short we had that had just gone up on Alter called Wretch. His email went into my junk mail, and
he very kindly emailed us, and we ignored him for 2 weeks.
Yeah, ignored him for 2 weeks. Then I fished it out, then probably waited like at least another couple of days before I emailed him back.
Well, no, before you came to me and said, oh, do you think we should message this guy? And I was like, yeah. Duh.
And then we got on a chat with him. We were like, all right, what's the deal with this? Okay. All right. Okay, sure, whatever. Okay, fine. If we come up with an idea, then maybe we'll do it. And then we kind of like we got off the call, and then we were like, should we do it? And then we were
Nathan gave us really good vibes.
Yeah, Nathan gave us really good vibes, and I think that was like that kind of thing of like, fuck, we should do this, shouldn't we? And it was like it was
just being lazy.
We were being very lazy, and then it was kind of that thing of kind of being like, as we kept going, we were kind of like. We were kind of like, fuck, like we're so fucking lucky that I actually checked my junk mail, and finally, so
coming on out the other end. And I think initially we were talking about this sort of like preacher idea, because we also came on a little bit later, so we knew we had to turn it around quite quickly. But we found an idea pretty quickly, and there was this idea of like a preacher maybe preaching to their congregation, and then that's how that turned into YouTube. And then we kind of went from there into your love of conspiracy theories. Not that you like, but that you are.
You have to preface that. I don't like. I'm not
into know a lot about them.
I'm fascinated by people who believe in conspiracy theories. I'm not
right.
into conspiracy theories.
Fascinating characters, yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
So that's it basically.
Excellent.
But you know, yeah.
And Bobby?
About the same story as a lot of people's. We'd prepped, Zach and I, for a movie, for a feature for about 3 years. We were shooting in June, and it was shut down. So we were super bummed, and this was probably around March, right, when it all started. And then we got the call from Nathan. I was kind of conflicted because my kids are very small. They were 3 and 5 at the time. And I go back and forth to LA a lot usually. And so I wasn't around as much. And I think that these are pretty formidable years, and I wanted to be around them a lot more. And this quarantine kind of gave that. It was a blessing in disguise, as bad as it all was. We still had a lot of family time. So at first I was kind of hesitant to do it. And then we kind of thought backwards and said, well, what if we can do this Lord of the Flies type of a story where we can incorporate the entire family and use them? And so, you know, I was really nervous on how it was going to play out with a 3 and 5-year-old listening to dad give them direction and lines. And but it ended up being like really a 2-month film school. It was just this educational family event that we all worked really hard on. And you know, hopefully they look back fondly on it as well. And it was really, really a special time.
That's excellent. Yeah. I've worked, you know, working with child actors, especially your kids. I can imagine there's like a little bit of there's an expectation there. There's a little bit of definitely a nervousness there.
Sure. Yeah. You don't know if they're going to listen to dad better. They'd listen to a stranger better, and probably a stranger. But but all in all, we got it done. You guys don't ever need to see the outtakes, so we're good.
Adam. I cannot hear you. Give me one sec here. Still can't hear you. All righty. Let's jump into Christian real quick, and then we'll circle back around. Christian?
Yeah. Hey. Actually, I got a call from a friend, and he just told me about this guy in the States who's planning to make some kind of a virus isolation anthology. And I said, okay, is there any money? No. Is this guy real? Is there a serious kind of thing? He said, I'm not sure. Is it horror? I said, yes. Okay, that's interesting. So get me in touch. And once I came face to face with Nathan and James, it became pretty much clear these guys know what to do. These guys know what they want. And then it came across a great chance to be part of it, because I wanted to shoot some other stuff. It couldn't because of the lockdown. And so this came kind of a blessing, you know, to not have wasted this kind of preparation and maybe use it to do some other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all the shorts, they show a lot of ingenuity, and they show a lot of like just stepping out and doing things really creatively, because you are stuck with some limitations. I mean, limitation being the mother of invention. And yeah, I'm glad that it came together. And Adam, how'd you get involved?
Can you hear me now? Or
yes, we can.
Okay, great. Yeah, I didn't know Nathan beforehand. I think we got recommended through a mutual filmmaker friend of ours, Horatio Baltz. I think he might have recommended us to James. But I remember Kyle and I, my directing partner, we had just like come to terms of like not wanting, like accepting that we were not going to make anything during the pandemic. Like we were just like, look, everyone's making their feature films or their novels and stuff. And we were like, you know what, I'm just going to accept not doing anything. And then I think like probably a day after of having that like talk with Kyle, I got an email from Nathan, and we were just kind of like, do we do this? And then the typical just meeting with him and just like weighing out the pros and cons. And then we got super excited for it.
Yeah. We kept talking about the pandemic, because obviously that is a huge, you know, aspect of how this film got made and what went into it. And I wanted to ask about how there's a lot of real world stuff going on in isolation. Of course, it's a little bit exaggerated at times, and unfortunately, a little bit not so exaggerated at times, whether or not it comes to conspiracy theory things or just the fact that there's a virus itself. And I wanted to talk about how you each approached just yourselves, how you each approached like telling these stories where the truth is stranger than anything else you could put on the page. Like, how did you go about that? Alix and Keir, your storyline is really intensely about like truth stranger than fiction stuff. So how'd you guys go about writing that into there?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, as kind of Alix mentioned, I've always had this weird obsession with the crazy shit people believe. You know, I got super into going down the rabbit hole on like 9/11 truthers and all sorts of things that I was just kind of like fascinated by, like crazy people who get into really sort of like intense conspiracy theories. And I'm a very like scientifically based, very logical person. So it's fascinating how people can get to the point where they believe there's like lizard people. And so the crazy thing was, I feel almost like our original script was even more insanely full of just like gibberish and crazy sort of conspiracy theories. And Nathan's like, you need to pull some of this back. It's just kind of like, it's just too much noise at a certain point.
Well, and also seeing sort of, well, depending on how you feel about it, obviously the sort of more approachable side, so that you have that sort of, you see the human behind the conspiracy theory as well, like she's lost her husband, all this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, to an extent, we were actually a bit shocked about essentially there hadn't been any riots in London mm-hmm. at the time when we shot the film, but then riots happened 2 months later. So we kind of felt like, oh, humans are kind of weirdly predictable, aren't they? Like when things get a bit dire and like you don't want it to happen, but mm-hmm. it kind of does.
Now, did you guys write a scene where Alix takes her face off and she's a lizard person? Like,
yeah, that was exactly it.
I mean, I think you were just like completely deranged pretty much all the way through. Yeah. And Nathan's like, they should probably like
get an intro. Her. Yeah.
You know, there should be like an
crazy
arc to this in some kind of way. You know, it shouldn't just be like just this crazy lady shouts gibberish at everyone for like 15 minutes and then pulls her teeth out. The flat's already
on fire. And,
you know, and then I was like, no, Nathan, you're totally wrong. And then obviously did what he said and then was like, oh, okay, well, I guess that's why you have producers.
It looks like we have somebody else here popping in. Andrew.
Come on, Andrew.
But moving into it, let's talk about Adam's segment as far as implementing kind of the real world stuff and the kind of the balance of that, more or less.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful.
I mean, I guess the inspiration wasn't too far away. I mean, I think it was just like Kyle and I were both kind of like dealing with being isolated in our own homes, and like, I mean, it's a little depressing, but you know, it's like, you know, like, oh, well, I wonder what, you know, like the degree of getting human touch or have, you know, like, you know, getting close to somebody again. And it wasn't like, well, what's one step higher, you know, like what that we can push it a little bit to like really meet that need. And so we were like, oh, what if there was a dead body up front? And then I forget whose idea it was to stick the meat into the gloves. But then we were like, oh, I think that's it. Mm-hmm. That was the visual we just like really fell in love with.
I'm going to keep peppering in deleted scenes I wanted to see. Was there a version where there was masturbation with the meat hands?
I was pushing for it, but Kyle said no. So.
And I mean, Bobby, you made your short is, you know, you talk about your kids or so. I'm sure that experiencing this this pandemic with little kids around and just in that situation was definitely changed your perspective and pushed a few ideas into your short.
Yeah, I think the impetus of a lot of it was literally looking over the water one day and thinking everybody at that time was always talking about 65 and up. Mm-hmm. That was this threshold where, you know, you weren't safe, but that was when it was really scary. And so with us all using a form of mutation, what if that age bracket shot all the way down to 12? And to me, what was really scary, I guess, just being a parent now and thinking that a newborn baby could be over there with 2 dead parents in the house, and then that baby's done for. And that kind of stuff would happen everywhere. And then these kids would be on their own. And so you have this, Emerald Forest, Lord of the Flies thing that would take over. And that was really intriguing to me. And then we always like to take something from the news and make it just hyper real or just up a level. And at that time too, they had let prisoners out of jail because of COVID outbreaks that were, they were there for white collar crime type stuff. But what if it shot all the way up to guys on death row, like the scary guys they had to let out, and things got that nuts. And then you're stuck on the island with 2 maniacs. And so using as much as you could to kind of touch on reality and kind of interweaving it with our fiction.
Excellent.
Talk about deleted scenes too, Bob. You have an entire alternative version of your film.
I do have a kid safe one because my daughter, we were very conscious about.
Oh.
She thought we were filming Sleeping Beauty. And so there's a whole scene where dad comes home, there's lightsabers, I kill the bad guys with lightsabers, I kiss mom, and she comes back to life. So that's in their head of what we were shooting. And so she never, without spoilers, she never saw some of the things that we think she saw.
Right.
Yeah, so no services for me.
And Zach?
Well, actually, my situation going into lockdown was very similar to Bobby's. I have 2 sons. At the time, they were 3 and 5. And as a parent going into the scenarios, is there became this very realistic idea that, had to go through the scenarios of consideration and anxiety of wow, what if I die? And then I'm leaving behind my wife and my kids. What if she dies? What if we both die and we leave the kids behind? And then finally it kind of all cycled into what if this woman is left behind and she's left either still in lockdown in this house, and not only that, the rest of the city has kind of been taken out or evacuated, but if you've kind of lost everything at that point, would you actually even move on and move somewhere else? Would you stay over just in your space for a little while? And what would that be? And so, my wife, Hannah, and I kind of explored that idea as a short film, essentially. But, the whole time though, of course, we're in lockdown. And so my 2 sons were with us in tow the whole time while we're filming, out in the abandoned city and all sorts of stuff. So, it was a lot of fun to at least get to, it was a good way to distract from getting too wrapped up in those sorts of worries and things. Cause there was a huge X factor at that time, not that we're completely out of the woods now, but we all feel a little safer, I think.
Yeah. So Andrew, I've got to ask, your mustache looks just as good as mine. Where are you?
You know what, man? Halloween will never die, and I refuse to let it. No, I'm on a set, so I'm kind of doing a quick run-in. I don't think I can say what movie it is, but it's a well-known cult filmmaker, and I'll just kind of leave it at that. But I got roped into this today, so yeah.
Excellent. Well, we're talking about writing stories wherever the truth is stranger than fiction, and your specific section definitely encapsulates that a bit. And I just wanted to ask you about your approach to writing, a story where the truth is stranger than fiction, i.e., somebody who believes that 5G is making them making them sick.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't write this segment. This was written by a really great horror novelist named Cody Goodfellow.
Okay.
And conspiracy theories and government stuff are sort of his jam. And I'd come up with this idea just about doing a short with a guy in lockdown, with an ankle bracelet on house arrest, who just flips out and starts thinking that his ankle bracelet is talking to him, and that kind of naturally led to Cody injecting all the conspiracy theory stuff, and that was, I think Nathan and James really like honed in on that particular idea that we pitched, and it's crazy because at the time, like we were looking at all the conspiracy theories that were starting to, happen with everybody on lockdown and kind of losing their minds. It was sort of like the perfect storm for all this stuff to like kind of all that to cream to rise to the top. I remember like Nathan, we were like talking a lot about like the different levels of conspiracy stuff that was going on in the short and the dialogue and how much is too much. And like, there was a lot of back and forth about like, how much is this dude willing to believe? And I think we settled on, well, conspiracy theorists will believe anything. And to the point where I think at the time that we've shot it, well, look what's happened. It's almost like the whole 5G microchip concept is like on the tiers of conspiracy theory nut jobs. Like the 5G stuff is now kind of like, bottom middle rung compared to like lizard people and insurrectionists. So it was funny to like, tap into all that before it totally exploded and went mainstream thanks to social media.
Yeah, it is definitely, it is on one hand, we can chuckle about it, and on the other hand, it's just crazy. It's just absolutely unnerving. Christian, how did you approach your section?
Actually, what I found specifically creepy in that situation was the fear to lose your freedom and the fear to lose control above your life. How fast that can happen if a crisis is going on like that, and to be kidnapped from your home because you're infected or different, you get put in a container and transported to an unknown location, and hearing rumors about people experimenting with you. It just came to my mind. This is a few decades ago. This happened in Germany, in the real life. So in a way, this is maybe this is a German thing. How history can repeat itself when freedom starts to be in danger. I hope you get the thing that I just
Absolutely. So, this was shot during COVID, and that, of course, that brings up all these anxieties you're talking about, but it also brings up the anxiety of how am I going to shoot something in a contained space during COVID? Which, is for anybody who's been on any type of film set, it's always much harder than you think it's going to be. So I wanted to ask about what were some of the specific challenges that each of your shorts brought up whenever you were shooting? Let's go with Zack. Okay, whoever said something first.
Lack of the cameras that you're used to using, and then you have these scenes in your head that you want to shoot properly, but we're not going to get to light it right. We're not going to have a crew. And so probably a quarter of the way in, I wanted to do like a motorcycle chase. I knew I was going to have to use the kids running through the forest, but I didn't have a steady cam. I wasn't going to be able to do that. And so what I thought about is we 3D printed handles around the drone. And the drone itself has a gimbal and basically is a steady cam up in the air. So I thought if I run around with that, it still shoots 4K and we'd be able to keep everything. There'd be no shaky cam, right? Mm-hmm. And for us to do that. And so I did. And then the 3D printer, it was great. Like I was surprised how many just blueprints of that you could just find online, printed it, fit the drone perfectly. And then it had a monitor and a handle. And I was able to use that for a lot of the shoot. And that's why, unfortunately, you wouldn't have the right audio, but at least for the look of it, keeping it steady. So, I mean, that was that was one of those things that was just nice to learn, that I would have never have thought of it that way if I had, you know, a backup, or, you know, had the opportunity to have better cameras.
Yeah, absolutely. Zach, did you find
Uh,
any challenges or fun set
yeah.
stories, stuff like that?
I mean, the stuff that became challenging, but also part of the fun was that, you know, the whole family was in lockdown together. You know, it was Hannah, myself, and our two kids. And so they were also in distance learning. So it's like, it became like, the shoot became like molded around like, okay, they're going to be mellow this time of day, and we'll probably can get away with filming some scenes, you know, then, and, or you know, we'd have to shoot before or after school time with our virtual school. And then we'd like make it an adventure. We're gonna go out into the desert, we're gonna film out, or we're gonna go out to the city where there's absolutely no one right now, and we're gonna film out here, and you guys can kind of run around, because you don't normally get to do that because there's usually cars and traffic and people. So I mean, it was kind of, we just kind of made it an adventure. But yeah, the scheduling became the weirdest thing. I was just kind of like, in my mind, I was like, oh yeah, we'll film in a couple days, like this is great. And then it was like stretched out over like a week of like, oh no, this kind of has to fit into this weird family, this ever fluctuating family schedule. But felt really fortunate to have access to the equipment I had access to, you know, and we just kind of made do with what we had, but had a lot of fun. And it was, you know, just feel really fortunate to have gotten to work on this project during that time.
Excellent, excellent. Alix, Alix?
Oh, yeah. I think what's important, like with us to mention, is that with the UK, like literally the law and rules at the time were very much, this was May 2020 we were shooting it in, so it was literally, you may leave your house for 30 minutes to go exercise or get groceries. And that was it. Like you weren't allowed to leave for other reasons, basically. So we were a little bit, again, this was all like when everything was quite unknown and you didn't know what was going on with the virus, like how deadly it was, whatever. So we were like, okay, well, we'll just keep it like, we'll keep it 100, as they say. And so we're like, we should try and just keep it inside. But we did a lot of production design, and we essentially lived on the set, and that was quite oppressive with like the lighting, because we just gelled our own lights. So the living room was like really like,
so the living room had this weird red like sort of tinge, because I kind of like put these gels on the lights so that there's a kind of like red rim around the top. And then
literally the wall behind us was the conspiracy wall. So we would take our Zoom meetings for like our day jobs, and it would be like, this is not, ignore this. This is not actually what we believe. It's for a film set, we promise.
It's like suddenly just this thing of like, it's all a lie, or something like that, and kind of like just as you're trying to have like a normal meeting about kind of, you know, day-to-day stuff. Yeah. And then of course the weirdest thing was that Alix covered the bathroom in tinfoil. Yes. So we had about a week of just having the bathroom covered in tinfoil every time we went in, which was really weird.
It was very cozy.
It got really hot in there as a result.
But the thing we were really lucky with in that regard, though, is that, to be fair, you had to walk like 40 minutes, but we have a mate who lives down the road who had a sound kit. So we were really lucky that we were basically able to borrow his mixer and a, what do you call it, radio mic.
Right, we had a radio mic, but we also had a boom as well.
Which, and, you know, basically the way we got around sound issues, because it was literally just the two of us. So Keir was filming and recording sound at the same time, and I'd press the button, but he'd hold the boom pole while trying to like manhandle everything. So I clipped the radio mic on as part of my character doing the YouTube thing. So we were like, at least this way we'd get clean sound. My favorite story with that is that our sound designer came back and said, the audio on this is actually better than most of the TV shows I work on. Well, which I thought was a
and I will say too, like we sort of thought, oh, it's just the two of us in our flat and we have like days to do it, we'll be fine. But no, literally the most stressful shoot I think I've ever done.
We literally went insane. Like we went as insane as the surroundings we were in. It makes sense though.
Yeah. Adam?
For me, so we ended up shooting at Kyle's house. I'm in Brooklyn. He's in Yonkers. Okay. It's about an hour drive. But once we knew we were going to do it, I quarantine myself for 2 weeks. So I kind of was like actually getting into character, you know, like really isolating myself before going up there. But I think that actually helped us in a way, because like one of the challenges, obviously, like with everyone, we didn't have a crew. It was just me, Kyle, and his wife, who plays the dead body. And we didn't have, you know, access to lights. But what Kyle ended up doing was studying the light in his house. And so we kind of like in that time made a schedule of like where different light hits kind of in the, you know, in his house, and schedule around that to kind of like, you know, hopefully it's not a cloudy day, but, you know, we were fortunate in that regard.
Yeah, that's always tough. You know, it's like, but that's so cool that you can kind of figure out what the exact lighting is going to look like and then kind of just roll with it. I mean, that's amazing. And Christian?
I knew that the location would inspire the story. Yeah. So if you have a location, you have a story. So in a way, I thought, oh, lockdown could be a cool thing because so many places were abandoned and closed at that time. My first idea was to shoot in a school that was closed, you know, with all these empty kind of floors and stuff like that. And we discussed this idea with Nathan, and then we didn't get the allowance to shoot there, and then the space becomes more and more narrow, and until it became a confined space, a container. And that was pretty hard to shoot in because, of course, it was pretty hot in there, shooting summer, and we just had it for 7 hours. So yeah, this was all the time we had to do all this kind of things, and yeah, and the container inspired the story in a way, you know. So the less you have, the more you have to think of something original.
Yeah, absolutely.
Quick, did you have to ADR everything in that container?
Oh, actually, we should have done that because the sound was pretty shit. And in post-production, I'm always the guy to say, the sound is so important, guys, so important. Everybody's covered with the visual. The sound is so important. Make sure to have a great original sound. And we fucked it up because in this context, there was no chance, you know. So the other guy was ADR anyway, you know, and we used the original sound, but we had a lot to do in the post-production to enhance it, to make it as good as possible.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like I've been kind of neglecting Nathan over here because I've been talking about like creative processes with you guys. But this question kind of talks much more about general shape of the project and how much you guys were involved in it. You all have different styles. Like some people prefer the handheld cameras, some people prefer getting on tripods and doing much more. You know, there's a lot of POV stuff and Homebodies. I just wanted to ask you all about, and Nathan specifically, about tying it all together, making sure that, you know, all these different pieces stay consistent, even if they are quite different.
All right, I'll take it first. So that was kind of from the onset, it's kind of what I wanted. I mean, you know, you've seen anthologies where everything looks the same throughout because everybody has to shoot a certain way. And I felt, you know, because we're going around the world, so to speak, and living in these different places with these different people, but it's all happening at the same time, they all should look unique, right? They all should. So it's not about, because some people are like, oh, you know, they all don't look the same. Well, that's not the point. I mean, the real point is to sort of really get into these situations with these characters and with these stories. And if they all look the same, I don't think it would have brought you in, made you lean in as much. So, you know, to me, when the filmmakers said, oh, I want to shoot in this aspect ratio, I want to shoot on this camera, I was like, well, absolutely. You know, because again, it's very specific to that story, to that city that we're in. And then my idea to put them all together, not only with the wrapper of sort of the veins that are moving through the cities, the virus, if you will, and then, you know, obviously giving us the name of the place that we're at, was to sort of just sprinkle in little moments throughout each piece that hark back or hark forward to something we're going to see later. You know, again, you know, 5G links up with It's Inside in the UK as Conspiracy. You know, Zack's film, Gust, speaks to Bobby's movie about these kids being, you know, running around alone, you know, and then you have in Zack's film, There Is No Kid. So it was very specific. You know, originally the movies were in a different order and we had different connective tissue. And then I was like, this order is not going to work. So James and I watched it in many different ways, many different times, and finally found the order. And then I had to go back to the majority of the filmmakers and ask them to redo some things, which at that point, things were pretty much done. But I knew that, you know, what I really love about it in the reviews and the people that I think really appreciate the film, they pick up on that. And I think those subtleties that link them all is what makes it special, what keeps it in that world and allows them to sort of have their own voice. And, you know, for me, I didn't want that part of it or the rapper to outshine my directors or outshine their story. So, you know, that's kind of the mindset I had moving forward with how they would connect. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of you talked about kind of coming into the project a little later. Whenever you were working on every single section, were you just absolutely separate from each other, or did you have any kind of idea of what everybody else was working on and how that related to what you're doing?
I think the thing that's kind of like is like I think we were all kind of, Nathan was our conduit because ultimately none of us saw the finished film until, you know, the screening. So we saw it for the first time at Fright Fest. Other people saw it for the first time at Scream Fest. So I mean, I think it was really like Nathan was the person who had the whole kind of like big picture in his head, and we kind of just had to kind of trust that it was all going to like fit together. So, you know, Nathan sends us a picture of Graham from 5G and goes, stick this on the wall and take a shot of it. And we're kind of like, okay, yeah, well, we assume it will make sense. I will say for all of this, I will say that we originally planned to have an insanely over stylized lighting scheme, and then Nathan was like, no, that's you need to like tamp it back a bit, like
which is fair enough.
I feel like our entire process was us going, we're gonna do this, and Nathan's kind of like, just pull it back just a little bit, you know.
Awesome. In like creating the shorts like towards the end or so, did any of you kind of encounter a note from Nathan to like that was pushing it towards a more consistent direction that you guys were like, dang, I have to change this thing I like?
I may or may not have had a zombie ending that Nathan deleted.
Yes, all of you just rag on Nathan now, please.
Yeah, but it's good though. It's the right.
You're all allowed. You're all allowed to be honest, because I know I had many conversations with everyone. So you feel free.
No, totally.
This is your time.
Oh, but you have to trust your captain, right? And we hadn't seen everything in a grand scope. We didn't know how far we were allowed to be, like how hyper real this was going to get to. And so all in all, you know, all those notes and those cuts made it better. So I mean, I think it was the call. We saw the trees, he saw the forest, and we needed that. So
Zach, do you have anything you miss so much?
No, actually nothing that I miss. I think the biggest change was that I think when we first turned in the film, it was kind of like you just had spent all this time with this woman and kind of, you know, mostly silence, you know, and this very quiet world. And it's almost as if like the reality outside didn't exist at all. But the you know, connective thread was the news story that she's watching it, and you know, that is connecting us to the rest of the world and connecting us to Bobby's story. And at first, you know, it's like you get demo love early on when you're working on something, you know, it doesn't matter what you're working on. You're like, well, I like it the way it was, but it's like, but then once, you know, we put it in, and it's such a minor thing, but it was like, oh no, okay, well, the world expanded a little bit, but it didn't hurt, and it actually helps the bigger picture of the story, and it all felt right, and ultimately it was all about making this. It was, you know, this disconnected but very connected long distance collaboration with a bunch of people who are all a part of something, and then that was important, and I think that, you know, whatever, demo love, you get over pretty quickly when you have to.
I would agree in that, like, there was some stuff that like got cut from ours, and I think in the end it actually we didn't miss it, and so you end up realizing that like and especially within the bigger picture, when you then see the whole thing working together, you're like, oh, I get it now. Like I didn't get it at the time because you're just working on your own little like, and you can't see. It was like you're focusing so much on one stitch. What was that saying?
You're like, I can't remember what it's like. It's something like you know, when you're working on a film, it's like every day you're doing a stitch and it's so hard to see the coat you're making, basically. Yeah. You know, it's like you get so focused on the one stitch that and like in a sense that's kind of the weird, like in this case we weren't the ones making the coat, it was Nathan who was making the coat. So we, you know, it's that thing of like, and you know, and it's like
trust your tailor,
and you know, and it's like any creative process. You know, Nathan sends us his notes on what we can, and we just, you know, obviously throw the laptop and go no, and have to have like a walk and cool down, have a strop, write him a strongly worded email, and he just kind of writes back, goes, okay, just chill out, just chill out. I feel like that was the entire process of Nathan just being like, calm down.
Nathan, you have a good demeanor. I gotta say that, man. You have a great demeanor.
Adam,
go ahead now.
Go ahead. No.
No, let them finish first. And
Adam and Andrew, do you have any stories from the editorial process? Any ideas that came in the interaction of creating the anthology?
I remember like we didn't like specific like story wise we didn't cut like any scene out, but I think like initially, like I know our film kind of has a slower pace, and I think the first cut that we sent Nathan was even longer and slower, and I'm just like, no, the audience needs to suffer because I'm suffering in this film. You know, like that was the internal dialogue that I was having, and then I was like, you know, this is our artistic integrity, and then like, you know, we got, you know, the email from Nathan, we were like, you know, the next night I was just like, oh, maybe we can cut this a little bit shorter, you know, and like ended up like cutting like 5 minutes out of the film. But I think one of the other things which actually benefits the film is that, you know, since Nathan was changing the order of things, we kept having to re-record our radio broadcasts that happened. And like, so we did it like once or twice, like while we were still in production, it was fine. And then I think like months later, he like sends us this email. It's like, yeah, this film is out, we need to change it. And then like Kyle and I are just like, we can't do this. But eventually we negotiated our way into it. But we just felt so bad getting our actors to do it. And also our mixer, because we like, you know, we were fully baked in, so.
Yeah, I think we had the same sort of thing where it was we had a TV broadcast where all these voices were coming out, and like every 3 days Nathan would send a new email going like, okay, no, this has changed, so can you rewrite this dialogue to be that? So like, I think we went through like 10 revisions or something over the course of like, okay, all right, so the New York virus is mutating. Okay, all right, now South Florida, what's going on in Florida now? You know, and it was just like all that constant back and forth. But you know, everything else is pretty much the same. It was just like throwing that stuff in or changing it to tie as much together as humanly possible.
I did the opposite. I asked Nathan if picture was locked about 3 months ago, because I caught this like coyote walking down the street. There was like nobody around. I was like, oh, I can put this in there too. He's like, we're done, man. We've been done for 8 months. Stop.
Bobby would continually, he's like, more and more footage. And you know, I just wanted to jump in. It's a testament to all the directors, because they have you ask a good question because they all have such a strong vision and a strong passion for their story. So for James and I, it was very important for us to be able to like let that shine, because it's not my movie, you know what I mean? And I wanted it to be there. So, you know, handling it somewhat with kid gloves, only because I did see a little bit of the bigger picture, was that was probably the most stressful part for me, because I wanted them to be proud of the movie that they made, and I didn't want them to think I was trying to make a movie for them. But yes, Bobby continued to send me footage, and there was a point where I continued to put it in, and then we had to stop.
We have to master now. We have to master. Christian?
Yes, I think sometimes magic happens, you know, because in my movie, there's this drone shot when the camera pans away and we see this big container ship. And Bobby, when he shot the whale that was stranded, in the background, there was a ship looking pretty much the same, So there was some connection. And then in the end scene, when we see the kids in the container, and Bobby shot that in the States, and it was amazing. It looked completely like my container did in Germany, So this kind of combination was quite cool, I think. And we had, for a time, we had the idea to maybe have this guys in the biohazard suit. And Nathan asked me if I can buy the suit and a mask and send it to the States. And this became so much more of a challenge than shooting the film itself. So it never got there, but I sent it, But maybe at that time it was quite stupid to send a biohazard suit and a mask, because everybody would just rip it from the back,
Excellent. So I typically like to kind of, end these interviews off with a very simple question, kind of a treat question, and also I like hearing like where people's brains are whenever it comes to horror, which is if don't even think about it, if you had a film that you would recommend to any of the audience members, what would it be? Just a horror film, anything. And I'm going to go with, and I think, if I remember from reading your from bio, Zach, I think you'll probably be a little connected to this. I'm gonna go with May by Lucky McKee, which is excellent. And
Awesome.
yeah,
great film.
I think families should sit down together and watch a Serbian film.
Oh, we're playing that game now.
Oh man.
All right.
I'm kidding. I like to recommend to people. I think a lot of people haven't seen Lake Mungo, and I always stand by that as probably the best found footage movie I've ever seen. Most authentic and just executed so well. So,
yeah, excellent. Alex and Austin, Alix and Keir.
I would say probably High Tension for me, which is like just an excellent film, and I don't know if that many, like, it's not one of the ones that people have necessarily seen as much, so I just really like it.
Which the fun is, it's in the UK, its UK title is actually Switchblade Romance, which I think is a really cool title. Wow. So it's always, I'm kind of really disappointed when it's like everybody else knows it as High Tension. I'm gonna go with, just looking at my DVD shelves, Razorback. Okay. The 80s Russell Mulcahy film that he made right before Highlander, which is like a giant mutant pig roaming the outback and terrorizing people, and it's also kind of pseudo a Mad Max movie as well. Just all those kind of crazy Australian people that you only find in Australian exploitation, but you just like to believe actually go roam the outback.
Awesome, that sounds great. I'm gonna have to check that out. Adam?
I feel like I had two answers. Like my pretentious answer, I was thinking about this, and I was thinking of right before the pandemic, I saw the like new 4K restoration of Come and See, which isn't a horror film, but it was probably one of the most horrific experiences that I've had in a theater by myself. Like just watching it and just like wanting that film to end. And then I remember winning, when that film finished, I was kind of like, I either want to never see this film again, or I want to watch this film every day just to understand like what it was doing to me. Definitely was an experience. I also wanted like just fun horror wise. I have a personal connection to it, but great fun film that's on Amazon right now is Uncle Peckerhead. Good buddy of mine made that. If you want to see me die again, I'm in that also. But it's I feel like I want to get the word out on that one. So
I do want to see you die again. So thank you for the recommendation.
Yeah.
I just want to jump in quickly to say that's crazy, Adam, because literally at dinner while we were at Fright Fest, Bobby was like, I've never seen a film. There's no film that's more intense than a Serbian film. And I'm like, you've never seen Come and See, motherfucker. and so it's so funny that you said that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Christian?
Oh, well, I would say Suspiria, the original from Dario Argento. This is a movie that really fucked me up when I watched it first time, because this was some kind of completely different kind of power and visual style. And for the more fun part, I would say The Descent. Quite a ride.
The more fun part, you said? The descent?
And of course,
yeah.
I was kidding. I was kidding. But this is what I would recommend to the audience.
Nathan's like, good. One of you had to do it. And Nathan?
I think I would definitely say for me, it would be Cavalier, the French film. I think the American title is The Ordeal. I got really, really into like all that French extremist stuff, and it's stuck with me. Just so much I think the horror between people, and I think that dynamic in that movie is just fascinating, and it just goes to a place that is so freaking bonkers. Yeah, and it just leaves you feeling almost as awful as like Texas Chainsaw. So I think everybody should watch that and see, and then go take a shower.
Excellent. Well, this has been the group of wonderful filmmakers behind the anthology Isolation that will be coming out. Well, actually, when is your release date?
The movie dropped November 2nd on
November
VOD.
2nd. All right.
So everybody can see it right now.
All platforms, Google Play, Vudu, all that stuff. All right. That stuff. Excellent. This has been the wonderful group of filmmakers behind Isolation. And this has been for HorrOrigins.com. Just as a reminder, HorrOrigins is a website where you can find articles, reviews, and interviews. And we also run our very own film festival and screenplay competition. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Thanks, Stephen.